Hi, this is Bill Murray. This is my Prezi on developing positive relationships with students. So it's divided into three parts. First is developing positive interactions, then introductions, and then social and emotional well-being. So the first section, developing positive interactions, is split into 5 parts. These come from the chapter on Marzano was very useful, and then some research that I did myself, and then also things that I've used in the classroom that I've found that work quite well. So the first one is getting to know your students, which is extremely important. You need to try to take the time to talk to them as much as possible, find out what they're interested in, and try to build up a relationship that way. I mean, that's just the simplest way of doing it, is to take the time to speak to the students when you see them in the hallway or before class, at the end of class. So pretty straightforward, but very, very important. Next is showing affection, which can be, and Marzano talks about this, it can be a little bit tricky. You've got to tread a fine line between showing the kids that you care about them, but without in any way being creepy or a little bit weird. So, I mean, as you can see in the picture, something like high-fiving your students or a pat on the shoulder, something like that would be a good idea. But basically, if you're kind of engaging with your students and making eye contact and smiling at them, that's kind of super important. Again, very basic, but it can't really be overlooked. Then we move on to protecting the student's self-esteem, which is very important. I think this is where it's in the classroom, whenever maybe if you have a problem with a student, maybe you're getting frustrated, the students are getting frustrated. I mean, it's very, very easy then to start using quite negative language, or to be, maybe if a student has been rude to you, then you feel that you should be getting your own back and maybe humiliating them in front of their peers. But I mean, that just is a downward spiral. So the most important thing is that you have to be detached emotionally, you have to remain cool, and you have to try to, be using positive language with the students at all times. But if you do have a problem with them, it's best to separate that student from the rest of the class. Ask them to speak to you at break time, ask them to stay behind after class, and then explain to them in a firm but fair fashion, why their behavior was out of order, or what steps you'd like them to take in the future to sort out their behavior. But definitely, kind of humiliating a kid in front of the class is not the way to go. Next, building goodwill. I think this is a very good tip. It's easy as a teacher to get into the habit of saying to students, why haven't you got your homework done, or why wasn't this done, why wasn't that done, why are you late to class? It tends to be quite negative. So it's very important whenever the students are doing things well to, make a point, point that out. So, for example, you could say, listen, as soon as I came in this morning, I saw that you had wiped the board down for me, and you had taken out the trash. So thanks a lot for that. That's great. I really appreciate it. Or, you've all got your homework done. You've all done a really good job. So superb. Well done. So any way that you can find to sort of compliment the students and build up that kind of positive, any sort of positive interaction that you can get going is definitely worthwhile. So yeah, building goodwill, very important. Next is listening to feedback. This is something that I think some teachers, I think they almost see it as a sign of weakness. If they give an instruction to the class and then the students come back and not challenge it, but say, could we do something different, or we're not really too keen on that. I think the teachers see that as a challenge, so they kind of block it instantly, or like, no. But I mean, I know from my own experience in teaching high school kids, they do have a very busy schedule. So if I say to them, okay, I need this homework done for next class, you can kind of sense a bit of sort of murmuring and grumbling, and rather than saying, no, I need this done for next class, then you can enter into dialogue with the students and say, have you got a lot of work on at the moment? Okay, all right, well, how about, rather than having this ready for Monday, have it ready for Wednesday? Is everyone okay with that? Okay, well then, no excuses then. Everybody has to have it done for Wednesday. And I think the students really appreciate that. If you do give them a bit of leeway and have a little bit of back and forth, that's really quite useful. So listening to feedback is another good tip. Okay, leaving positive interactions, moving on to introductions then. I think this is somewhere you need to let the students see that you're a human, but you don't want to be oversharing with them. So, but I think, I mean, family and hobbies are fairly straightforward. So, I mean, I would introduce myself and let them know that I'm married. So this is my wife, Hazel. She's Korean, but she grew up in America and then moved back to Korea when she was in, I think, she was 13, 14, whenever she moved back to Korea. So we met in Korea, and then 6 months ago we had our daughter. So we have a 6-month-old kid. So I mean, I think if you share that sort of information, then they can see straight away that you're, they can get a sort of a mental picture of what sort of a person you are. So I think that's important for building a kind of a relationship. Then hobbies as well. I think it's pretty good that if they can see what you like to do outside the classroom. And my big hobby is motorcycles. I love traveling, and I love motorcycling. And if I can go traveling on a motorcycle, it's even better. So I've dragged my poor wife along on many trips on motorcycles. On the left, this is us in Korea. Korea's a beautiful country to go riding in, so we enjoy riding there. And then on the right, this was a trip we took to the Alps. This was in Switzerland a couple of years ago, where we hired a nice big BMW motorcycle and went around the Alps. So if you can show them these pictures, they really, I think that's a good way of sort of building a bond. And also, I kind of make them laugh by talking about how Hazel regularly falls asleep on the back of the bike. She can sleep anywhere. It's quite incredible. So they're always very interested to know about that. So yeah, introductions. I think probably sticking to family hobbies, things like that is probably best. And then of course you can use that as a springboard to getting the kids to introduce themselves and what they like to do and all about their family. And then moving on, finally, social and emotional well-being, which is of course very important for the classroom. This one I've broken it down into a couple of areas that I think are quite useful, and from the reading that I've done, I thought that the critical practices section that we looked at was very useful for this, and then some other research that I did. So some pretty straightforward techniques that you can use in the classroom. First one is to hold regular class meetings, and I mean that's a really good chance for the students to bring up issues that they're issues that they're having maybe with peers in the class or anything that they're kind of struggling with. It just gives them an outlet, and it gives them a chance to make their voice heard. And I mean, you can set an agenda for the class meetings. You can draw that up in advance so that people don't feel that they're not able to get their voice heard. So you can set the agenda. You can get the students to set the agenda. And if you take 20 or 30 minutes to do that, it can be really worthwhile. So that's a good starting point for setting a sort of a social and emotional learning to get it into the class, is to start with the class meetings. Then you can move on to using conflict resolution to teach problem solving. That's another very good technique. I think whenever teachers see two students arguing or fighting, the initial reaction is to separate them and get them as far away from each other as possible. And okay, you clearly don't like each other, so just steer clear of each other. But that's maybe not the best way to go about it. You've got to teach the students that they're going to have to deal with people during their entire lifetime. They'll be dealing with people that they may not really warm to, but they're going to have to find a way of getting on with them and dealing with them. So that's where it's very important, I think, to if you have two students who are having an argument or fighting, then to get them to express what the problem is and be open with each other about what they, any issues that they're having, and then work out a way to get on with that person and maybe not push their buttons or explain to the other student how that student is pushing their buttons. So, I mean, I think that's super important. If you can teach the kids that skill, that's something that'll stay with them for life. So, definitely something that teachers should be thinking about. This one is called emotional sandwiching, and it just means that for some kids who are coming to school, they may be coming from homes where maybe the parents are fighting or there are problems with money, so it's quite a stressful home environment. So you want to make sure that they're looking forward to coming to school and they have a nice, safe stable learning environment where they feel that they're really part of a community. So, I mean, emotional sandwiching is just basically you're starting the day with some kind of a personal connection, like a high five or a greeting, or maybe if it's a younger kid, a hug. And how was your morning? Did you get breakfast? What did you have? And then the same thing at the end of the day, whenever they're leaving, there's a personal connection there. As good job, well done, great, you did very well today. See you tomorrow. Just making a simple personal connection at the start of the day, at the end of the day, can be really important. So that's a fairly simple technique, emotional sandwiching. And then the last one is building emotional capital, helping the children to build emotional capital, which means basically that you teach them. And we talked before about conflict resolution. It's where you're using the time in class to build up their self-esteem, but you're also teaching them how to regulate their emotions whenever they get into an argument with another student, or when they're frustrated, or they don't get a good test score. You're teaching them resilience, again, maybe linked to test scores if they haven't got the score that they wanted. You've got to teach them to try and pick themselves up and dust themselves off and get going again, get back on the horse. Now, optimism is another important skill. If things aren't going well in a course that they're studying, try to focus on the positives and keep pushing forward, and they'll get their reward. So if you can sort of build up all those different areas, then you're preparing them very well for life outside the classroom. If they've got a lot of emotional capital, then they should be pretty successful. So I think I forgot to mention at the start of the presentation, I teach high school kids. They're 11th and 12th grade, so I teach social studies, economics and politics, and some history. I've tried to, some of these things I have used in the classroom, but some of them I've just sort of discovered through this section, this unit that we've been studying, and then the research that I've done. So I've found it really useful. So I hope maybe a couple of the things that I've brought up here are useful to some of the teachers in the cohort, and I look forward to looking at your prezzies as well. So speak soon.